Cape Cod, a place known for its natural beauty, charming villages, and vibrant summer tourism. But beneath the idyllic surface lies a serious issue, a housing crisis that's impacting year-round residents and workers. How did this happen, and what's going to be done about it? Let's dive in. So first, just to orient everybody, Cape Cod is southeastern Massachusetts. Boston, you can see up here. And Cape Cod is isolated by a bridge, and this is the area we're going to be discussing. Now, I'm not going to talk about all of the housing on Cape Cod. First, I want to focus on the lower and outer Cape, because those areas have the highest demand for housing, the highest pricing, and the majority of the issues are in that area. That's also where I happen to live. As you can see the little blue dot in Harwich, I live in Harwich. I own 2 small businesses in Orleans, a small local art gallery and a recording studio. And this whole area is known as the Lower Cape and Outer Cape. I'll show you a little chart here because this describes the 4 regions of Cape Cod. And yes, that is Eastham, not Eastham. So you'll always know if somebody's not from here when they say Eastham. Lower Cape is Orleans, Chatham, Harwich, and Brewster. You've got Mid Cape with Barnstable, Yarmouth, Dennis, and then you've got Upper Cape. They call it Upper Cape because it is higher in elevation. That's why it's traditionally been called Upper Cape, Mashpee, Sandwich, Bourne, and Falmouth. So those are the regions of Cape Cod. We're going to talk about Lower Cape here, these 4 towns, and Outer Cape, these 4 towns. The Cape Cod Commission has made this handy tool where you can see the different housing profiles of the different towns. And you pull up the report, it'll tell you all the details about what's happening in that town, the demographics, the housing pricing, the income, the amount of houses that are rentals, the amount of full-time residents. So we're going to go through the towns, all 8 of these, when you talk about Outer and Lower Cape. A big reason why there's such a housing crisis out here is, first of all, this is a desirable area. It's very expensive at this point. There's extremely limited housing. One of the major reasons why it's so limited is because of the Cape Cod National Seashore. So all of this land that's in green cannot be developed. It's National Seashore. So what that means is that no housing's ever going to get built there. There was some housing built within that area prior to it becoming a national seashore, a national park, but now you cannot develop on it. So you've got anywhere that's not green, you can develop. And those areas are heavily restricted from historical society, from development, building code. There's all these different reasons why those areas cannot get developed, or any housing that is built is going to be single family. Very few multifamily buildings are built in those areas. Again, historic area. The people that live here, the town voters, don't want to see this turn into Atlantic City or into Long Island. So that's good and bad. It's good in that the place is going to maintain its character. It's bad in that the housing that's here is almost what you're going to have forever. So you're not going to have a lot of new houses built. You're definitely not going to have a lot of multifamily buildings built. We're lobbying in local groups to try to get more 2-3 story multifamily buildings built in town centers where it's not going to change the look. If anything, it's going to create more of a vibe. It's going to create a better scenario for people. If they come here and they see a town center that's vibrant, people can walk to the store. They can, instead of driving, walk to work possibly. So we want to see these town centers, these activity centers get more developed and have higher density. Right now, a lot of the town centers are a lot of cute shops, not a lot of housing, and then it's mostly suburban. So that's a big problem. We'll look at these housing profiles of these different towns, and if people want to see more, we can cover the Mid Cape and Upper Cape too in another video, or I can go into further depth on these different towns and get into more of the logistics and all the demographic details. But these reports are pretty high level, but they're going to give you a good amount of information to understand what's going on out here. But again, when you look at the density of what's built out here, you can see it's relatively dense for, it's not like the middle of nowhere, Texas, but this is all suburban. It's not urban. You've got the urban area in Orleans, which is where my shop is. It's an urban area, but it's surrounded by suburbs, and it's surrounded by a lot of undeveloped area that cannot be developed. If you want to see an area that's National Seashore, this is what it looks like. So you've got no housing here. You might have a few different things that were built back in the 50s that are still there, but otherwise it's just undeveloped. So you've got a couple beach access points. Eastham is, extremely sparse. Wellfleet, that's actually part of Wellfleet, very sparse. And as you go further out, it gets more sparse in Truro, and then P-Town, Provincetown. You've got North Truro, and then you've got really just a bunch of beaches, and then P-Town. There's like this main strip, and if you want to see the density in Provincetown, which is what I'm advocating for in other areas, the town center is dense. It's a major tourist destination because they've built it like a town center, and they haven't restricted development, and they've made it vibrant. A lot of people live and work in that exact same area without driving, because driving out there is pretty tough, especially in the summer. But anyways, you get high density, you get a really vibrant culture, and you get a lot of people in one place, so the businesses thrive. You don't have people having to drive there. You don't have it being, completely dead at night because people are still living there. So anyways, let's get into these profiles of these towns. Let's start with Provincetown. Okay, so the housing profile for Provincetown. The population, 3,600 people year-round. All right, 1,996 houses. The average household size, 1.8 people. There's 4,900 housing units. The median home sales price is almost $900,000. The household income, $91,000, which for out here is pretty high because this is talking full-time, year-round residents. The residential property tax rate is $5.58. So you can look at the age demographics as well, but overall, that's an expensive place to live, and the median household income is pretty good, but still, if the average median household is around $900,000, $91,000 income is not gonna cut it. And this is like a pretty well-off area. But let's look at the actual housing types. So you've got duplex, triplex, pretty high percentage compared to other towns that are on the lower and outer Cape. Condo apartment, 61.6% of the multifamily housing. But what's really interesting is what is the percentage of seasonality? So owners to renters, you've got 76% own the properties, 24% rent. Seasonality though, 31% own, 10% rent, 55% is seasonal, which means it's Airbnb, it's temporary, it's a 1 month rental. It's not year-round housing, or it's just somebody that lives there and doesn't actually go there except for vacation on their own, and then they don't rent it out at all. So there's a lot of reasons why it's in that seasonal category. It could just be recreational or occasional use, or like an Airbnb. And then there's 4% vacancy right now. And I don't know how there's any vacancy in Provincetown. Single family homes, 18.3% of the residential properties. So low percentage single family homes. You can dig into the other parts of the report, but we're going to move on and just give you that context on each town. But you can really dig into these reports and figure out how much are people making, what are they doing for work, and why is it that this area has a housing crisis? Well, the cost of living is extremely high. There's very few year-round homes that are available, and the median income is making it almost completely unaffordable to buy anything out there. So you have to rent, and there's very limited rentals. You'll notice a trend when we're talking about these towns. Truro. Total population of Truro is 1,627 people. 1,627 people. So 1,000 households. You got 3,400 housing units. Median home sales price is actually higher, $945,000. All right. And I think that has something to do with the density being pretty low. And you want to talk about a suburban area, Truro is just about all suburban. There's nothing, there's barely a town center. Household income is actually a little lower, so it's actually even harder to live in Truro. People there are making $89,000 median household income. So let's look at the housing demographics though. Well, first of all, seasonal, 69% of the houses are seasonal. 69. 7 out of 10 almost properties are seasonal. So that's insane. We're talking 30% of the homes are year-round, of all the homes, and there's not that many homes. So talk about trying to live in Truro, good luck. The houses that are not seasonal, well, it's virtually impossible to buy something in Truro. There's hardly any housing ever available, and when it is, it's bought for big bucks. So the amount of multifamily houses is 23% of the houses, which is higher than I would expect, to be totally honest, in that area. 70% are residential houses. And again, you can dig into these demographic details further, but extremely hard to live there. And the zoning is, residential 30%. So 30% of the land is residential, 2% commercial. You can see these little strips, which are basically just the roads that have a few hotels on them. And then you've got conservation. So that's all National Seashore surrounding that area. So let's take a look now at Wellfleet to compare. Okay, Wellfleet. So a lot larger than Truro, 4,352 people, 1,900 households, 2.19 household size. 4,862 housing units, median sales price $850,000, 97,000 median household income. So they're making more than P-Town and Truro by the median household income. High tax rate relatively compared to the other towns, but at the same time, that's an extremely low tax rate compared to anywhere else in Massachusetts. Cape Cod has very low tax rates because there's not a huge amount of infrastructure, not a huge amount of services, and there's a lot of expensive houses. So you can keep the rate relatively low and make plenty of money because there's a few coastal homes that are worth $4 or $5 million that can cover the whole nut. So let's see the seasonality. 57% of the houses are seasonal. So 41% of the homes are year-round in some capacity, either rented or somebody that lives there full-time. Still an extremely low percentage. And you've got a 14% multifamily house rate there, which is lower than I would expect because they actually do have a town center that is relatively dense. So let's take a look at Wellfleet. I'll show you the actual map. It actually has a relatively dense area that is the downtown quote-unquote area. And by dense, I mean, for Cape Cod standards. You've got the pier, you've got a lot of shopping in this area. But again, these are not really multifamily houses for the most part. They're single family, some of them are multi, but there's not a high percentage of multifamily. So if you go to Main Street, you'll see it's very quaint, very small town living, right? So you've got some commercial properties with some rentals above. This is about it for like the multifamily housing. There's not much. I'll say that. There's a bunch of small businesses, and then there's decent density of housing in that area, but the rest of it is very, very rural, suburban. So Wellfleet, again, really hard place to get a house. There's not many available. Let's see Eastham. So now we're really getting big. So you got 5,700 population. Right? Really small, obviously, compared to other places in the country, but 5,700 population, household size 2.1, 2,700 households approximately. Median household income, 80,000, so quite a bit lower in Eastham compared to Wellfleet, and then 715,000 median home sale price. So that seems reasonable. The tax rate's higher than it is in Wellfleet. You can see the age demographics here, but let's see the seasonality. 56%. So 56 out of 100 homes in Eastham are going to be, part-time rentals, or they're going to be seasonal rentals, or they're going to be recreational or occasional use. So you've got 43% of the homes that are actually year-round in Eastham. Now let's see Orleans, where my business is. Probably not going to be too good as far as like reasonable available housing and pricing. It's not terrible. 6,300 population, 3,000 households, about 2.07 per household size, 5,900 housing units. Median household income, 89,000, 840,000 median home sale price. Tax rate's a little lower than Eastham there. So what's the dynamic here? 47% seasonal, so not terrible. But again, think about what percentage of housing around you, wherever you live, is seasonal. And I would venture a guess that it's not 47%. It's not 47% Airbnb or services that are renting the homes out. It's probably 10%. 15%. It's not 47% of the housing. So again, we can dig in further into these reports if people are like, I really like this. Let's go through all the actual details of every report. But these are also available online. I'll link in the actual description of the video if you want to go check these out, especially if you're local. So let's go to Chatham, where it's, Chatham and Provincetown are what everyone thinks are the two richest of the towns. But let's see what Chatham looks like. Okay, 6,600 population, 3,200 households, 1.96 household size, 7,500 housing units, 1.2 million for the median home sale price. Okay, so yes, maybe it is the richest of the rich. And you've got median household income only 83,000. So it's actually even harder to live in Chatham than anywhere else compared to the median, to buy a home at least, because people are making a lot less than the other towns we've covered. 83,000. Property tax rates, very low. Half the tax rate of Orleans, almost. Half the tax rate. So you might say, well, how is that possible? And again, because there are so many $1 million houses, it's such a small town, there's so little infrastructure that they can have a rate that low and still cover all the services that are needed in that town. So you've got, these mega mansions out on the coast, which I can show you some pictures of those. But basically down in this area, you've got Main Street and you've got all this great shopping, but everything is super expensive in Chatham. But these homes out here are extremely expensive homes. You probably don't have, there's probably no street view. Oh, there is actually street view. Wow. Well, let's see what this one looks like. How about that? I don't know if you're gonna be able to see them. That's actually a relatively small house. But a lot of them are also, keep in mind, Cape Cod is an old area. But this on Zillow, let's see how much this house is worth. And these aren't even the big ones. The Zestimate is $3.61 million. Okay, so all the houses around here are 2.8, 5.2 million. The ones on the water a little more, 2.5, 3.3. But as you go around Chatham to different areas, you can see like this one's going to be a ton. So $19 million right there, that house on the coast. $19 million, $13 million. So these houses, $6 million. They're all, that one's $9 million. They're all extremely expensive homes, and a lot of them are pretty old. But these houses cover basically the taxes for the area. And yeah, there's no way you're going to have the Google guy that you can drop down there. But beautiful area to be. But again, keep in mind, you're going to have this super high cost to be on the coast. You're also going to have a lot of issues with potentially staying there long term, because the erosion out here is absolutely off the rails. So, and then you can see how nice though Main Street is. If you want to take a look here, Main Street, Chatham is one of the more popular places in New England, and it's very quaint and a lot of fun. Good times. So Chatham. Let's check out Brewster, where my sister lives. We'll see how much everything is in Brewster. And Brewster, Harwich are the two towns that are considered middle income. So 10,000 population, 4,500 households, 2.2 household size, 8,100 housing units, 686,000 median home sales price. Income actually higher, 95,845. Tax rate is on par with Orleans. So people in Brewster are making more and their home prices are lower. It's a lot more affordable in Brewster than it is in all the other towns that we've discussed so far. And 41% seasonal rentals. So they're doing a lot better. There's 56% of the homes that are either rented or year-round. So it's much more reasonable to live in a place like Brewster than it would be to even attempt to get a place in Chatham or Wellfleet or especially Truro. So good to see these numbers. Now let's see how Harwich is looking where I live. Dun dun dun. Okay, well, median income, not so good. So 13,440 population, 6,000 households, 2.18 household size, 10,526 housing units. Median household price is $675,000, 82,000 median household income. Tax rate, a little bit lower than Brewster. So Not great for income in Harwich. Household prices, though, a lot more reasonable than the directly adjacent areas. Let's see the seasonality. 38%. So it's going down as you're leaving Lower Cape or getting into Lower Cape. It's going down as far as the seasonal rental. But again, we're talking 58% of the houses are year-round. 38% is still temporary, basically, Airbnb or seasonal, where the people just come maybe for a week a year and the house sits there the rest of the year. And that's a very common thing out here, that people they want to have that house as their second or third or their fifth home. And they'll buy it for whatever, because they just want to have it. They've got plenty of money. They retired. They have Social Security. They've got tons of money saved up. And the people that actually live here are making $82,000 a year. They can't even dream about buying these houses. So it's a real problem. But let's just, as a point of reference, let's check Bourne, which is right at the bridge, right like towards the mainland. Let's see what Bourne looks like compared to all these Lower Cape numbers. Okay, so Bourne, much more affordable. As you get towards the bridge, there's a population of 20,000, 8,715 households, 2.3 household size, 11,438 housing units, 580,000 median home sales price. They're actually making more than the people in Harwich, so 90,000. Tax rate is about 25% higher in Bourne than it is in Harwich. So 8.02 is the rate. And 18% seasonal. So much, much lower. So that is a place where you can potentially find a house compared to Lower Cape and Outer Cape, which is virtually impossible. So when people buy these second homes in the Lower and Outer Cape, they're like, oh, I want to be there and I want to enjoy myself and I want to go to the restaurants and I want to go to the little shops and it's so cute. But what they don't understand is that every time they buy that house and just throw money at it, there's not going to be somebody to work in that restaurant next year, because they're going to leave, because there's no way to live here. There's no way to raise a family out here. The schools are dying because there's no families, because no one can afford to raise a family out here. So there's like no new kids. And now you've got a position where all the staff that would work in a restaurant at a lower income level are leaving. Nurses, educators, all the core groups that want to support society can't afford to stay here. And it's a real problem. There's a reason why people, even though there's the new millionaires tax in Massachusetts, and people are like, oh, all the millionaires are going to leave Massachusetts. Well, they haven't been. And there's been a lot of people coming to Massachusetts, and there's one key reason why. Well, there's many key reasons, but one really important reason is that the infrastructure here is really good. So we have what's known as the Human Development Index around the world, and you can judge societies on that number. And Massachusetts has the highest Human Development Index in the country, alongside Connecticut at 0.95, which is on par with Denmark. So people are leaving Florida and they're leaving Texas and they're coming back to New England, even though it costs more. But if you want to raise a family, Massachusetts is a great place to do it. Some of the best education in the world. But let's talk about HDI. I'll prove it to you what those numbers are. So what is HDR, Human Development Index? How long do you live? Life expectancy. What's your education level? Knowledge level, expected years of schooling. And is there a decent standard of living by income? So when you look at the chart, you can see, and I pulled up a few, we've got Denmark, the average United States overall, and Spain, for instance. So we were at one point back in 1990, top of the top, but we've been going down overall. So currently Denmark is 0.952, 81.9 years life expectancy, years of schooling almost 19 years, mean years of schooling 13, gross national income per capita 62,000. The United States, higher income 65,000, but lower life expectancy at 78.2 years of schooling 16.4, 13.6 mean average years. And then let's see, so that's the United States now. And then let's take a look at Spain. So Spain is a 0.911, 83.9 years, so they're living longer. Expected schooling 17.8 years, 10.8 average, or 10.6 average, 40,000 average income. So their income levels are quite a bit lower. The United States has really high income and okay total years of life expectancy, and education is decent. If you want to see the states, you can see here, Massachusetts, 0.95. And like I said, Massachusetts and Connecticut are both 0.95. Minnesota is also 0.95. New Jersey, 0.94. New Hampshire, 0.94. Colorado, 0.94. North Dakota, way to go, North Dakota, 0.94. So pretty high for a state that I wouldn't expect to be towards the top of that list. And I think that's because people in North Dakota live a long time, and they make good money because of all the fracking out there, all natural gas. But so you've got Massachusetts on the top of places that you want to have your family grow up and where you want to probably spend your time. This is the most up-to-date information I could get from Statista, which is 2021. Let's see who's the worst. Mississippi, 0.87, which on the world scale, 0.87 is still really pretty good. So let's pull up the world. We'll do everybody here, all regions. So you can see there's a spectrum. The world average is let's see, what's the world at? Where is the world? The world is right here. So the world is 0.739, 72 average life expectancy, 17,000 estimated income per capita. So quite a bit lower than, all the first world, as people call it, Western nations. Let's see who's on the bottom. Unfortunately, Somalia, 0.38, 56-year average life expectancy, $1,000 income per capita per year. And you can see that all the other nations, Mali, Burundi, Yemen, Burkina Faso, Guinea, Congo, Liberia, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Djibouti, and then you go to Micronesia, India. India's 0.64, and El Salvador 0.67. Venezuela's not doing so hot right now, but 0.69. Philippines 0.71. Needless to say, the people like it in Massachusetts because it's a healthy place to live. We have great infrastructure, great healthcare, and good. We have good income levels, we have good education levels, and we live a pretty long time. So that is the rundown. So why is it so hard to live on Cape Cod, and why are people leaving, and why is it basically a vacation community? Because the only people that can afford to come here are retired and are on Social Security, or have millions and millions of dollars saved up. So it's decimating the local population, and the people that grew up here are really finding this place unaffordable, and they're leaving, and they're not starting families. So the average age continues to go up, and staffing a restaurant or a hospital or teaching at a school, those jobs, fire departments, EMT, police, it's extremely hard to live here with the income levels that those jobs can support, while the housing is this expensive. So anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. If people have interest in watching more about this sort of thing, I can cover the other towns in more detail. I'll link the websites that I've shown on this in the actual description of the video, so you can check them out on your own and dig in further on the details. But if you like this video, please like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.